All right, welcome again to Design Summer Sessions. Juan, Jason, ready to hopefully kick some knowledge. And thank you to the 7 subscribers that we currently have. I think I said we had 1 last week, so we've bumped up to 7. Uh, Hope to hear from you. Like this, subscribe to this. There's more to come. So today we are talking about, and I will kick it over to Juan. Take it from here.
We're discussing the generalist versus the expert or the specialist. Two camps of philosophy generally picked on from creatives, especially designers, when it comes to growth and career development, and something certainly I've been particular to when thinking about my next career path. So yeah, Jason, if I can just kick it off, with a question.
Yeah, well, let me ask you, what do you think you are? General
Um,
specialist.
I think particularly now I'm a generalist. So my understanding of each of them is that a generalist is someone who has a broad knowledge of many and several skills and uses them to a particular point that's not really deep enough to be considered an expert in any certain topic. Whereas a specialist is that particular expert. So they specialize and they focus on one, maybe two, definitely not three or more skills or topics that, kind of put value in their career and as a professional. So me as a generalist, I would say, I'm skilled in type and branding and layout, let's say. But a specialist could be just specializing in motion and kind of animation, and that's all they would do, and that's all they're known for. So when I was in school, a lot of my questions and topics that we discuss are based off questions I had back then, but I still have now. And so, I was taught that it's good to be uh, deep in the weeds in as many fields and topics and skills as you can be when you're young, because you really should try out a multitude of things to find out what you really, really like. And something that you're afraid of, one year could turn into, your expertise the next year, and you had no idea because you didn't take the risk and just, take the chance and try to learn it. So I think, yeah, for me, generally, I would consider myself a generalist just because right now I'm a sponge and I want to learn as much as I can. But I think, eventually for me, I don't know if I want to be that specialist because you're tied down to stuff.
That's really interesting. I didn't think that's what you were going to say when you were explaining it. You were saying when you're starting out, you're supposed to be really deep in the weeds, and your path was so that you can explore and learn more. The
Mm,
What I thought you were going to say was that um, people would expect you to know and have skills in all of those spaces, and so you have to get really deep in the weeds. I would typically say that when you're learning, deep in the weeds might be too much. I would say maybe more uh, dipping your toes and knowing. Not everyone could know fast if it's going to be their thing or not, and it will always change. But
mhm.
deep in the weeds is a lot to be in general, you know, motion and layout and research and
Yeah.
illustration, photography and client management, and it just is everything. So I would say that uh, it's interesting that if it's for like getting out there and seeing if you like it, deep in the weeds is really cool if that's what you need to kind of determine that that's something you want to do. I think maybe a little more topical and quick is more helpful, because then you can narrow it down and then go deeper into the weeds into maybe round 2 of those types of things. uh I don't think there's no, this isn't a right or wrong answer kind of topic. We are Things are always coming out that are new. You got to become a generalist at it first before you become a specialist. We are always Our skills are always mutating around and involved in different stuff. Uh, Length of time usually makes you the specialist, or you really just want to focus on something in particular. And so running an agency, we have lots of generalists on our team that specialize in a few things and are generalists in everything else. And so that allows the team to kind of flex when you need help here, there, whatever that skill is. I myself, I don't particularly feel like I want to be a generalist anymore. Granted, I've been doing this for 25 years. I don't need to, I don't, from a professional standpoint, I don't personally want to like go out there and just jump into a whole bunch of other things right now. I want to become better at the things that I really like. And I think that 25 years is enough time to know those things. I'm a designer at heart. I love being in the design. I love working with the team in design. I don't want to not be part of that. So the things related to that to me are where my specialty lies. The things that have come and gone along the ways are UI, UX, interface design, just terms that are still part of those things. They are lumped within it. But at the end, it's the design piece that I love. And that's where I want to be a specialist. I want to help people solve problems through creative experiences and answers. But there are people who we work with who say, I only have this particular skill set and it's very limited, and that's all I want to do. An answer that, or an example that everyone would know is a food photographer. Food photographers are very specialized. It's a very specific set of skills. To be good at it is really hard. And that doesn't mean that you're a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer or a landscape or a culture photographer. It means I shoot food and that's what I do. So we've found amazing food photographers who just do that. And we've also worked with people who are general photographers who are great at shooting food. And, that's a kind of a, where do you want to live in the space? So I know that was a long intro into here, but what's the first question? And maybe we answered it, but what was the first
question? The first one's particularly regarding difficulties or boundaries that you might set up for yourself if you choose either camp. So if I'm a young designer and I say, I'm a specialist, I only do, X, Y, and Z, does that, like as a business owner, as someone who owns an agency, would that turn you off compared to a designer who's like, yeah, I've been learning, a lot of skills in my short tenure, and I've been stretching and flexing all the tools and skill sets that are around me so that I can keep learning, versus, a specialist who is very old and they're like, I've been doing this for, like you said, the time thing.
Yeah.
Specialty comes with time, but, are there certain boundaries or restrictions when someone chooses to be a specialist at a young age and only that for the rest of their career? What's your take on that?
I would say it's a business answer, which is the more specialized you get, the less opportunities that are general will present themselves to you. So for me, if I'm looking, let's just say we were looking for someone this week to help animate some motion graphics. And none of our designers, some of them with 20 years experience, are animators. And so one of our previous designers is an animator, and we reached out and said, can you animate? We couldn't just reach this out to anybody because it might not be a skill that just any designer would have. Like either you can animate and you know what you're doing or you don't. So if someone was to come through and is like, I slightly animate, that still might be really hard to hire them for this particular thing, versus someone who might be more of an expert. And that's what we decided internally is it is going to take us a lot less time to get an expert to do this one piece than for any of us to learn it or pretend that we're great at it. When we're not, we'd rather hire the great person. So in that particular one, we went to a specialist. those types of things happen, especially if you're a smaller team and skills are needed always all over the place. The flip of that is if you are young and you declare a specific thing, you can look only for those opportunities, but you'll have to figure out where those are. There might be a plethora of them. They might just be harder to find. I don't know what necessarily the specialty would be, but if you're a little bit more general when you're starting out, you probably will be able to qualify for more opportunities. So, and the other thing too is both of these, you're going to have different levels of expertise as a generalist or a specialist. You could be a specialist focusing on, let's just say I wanted to be a specialist in Spanish. I'm a 2 out of 10. I'll get there, but my skills are not good. You might be a 10 out of 10 for something like that, but you might also still be a language generalist. You might also speak German and Polish. So it's finding the right type of stuff that you want to do, but it's also finding it in the right level of expertise that you can fit. The more specialized you would be at a young age, I would say the less opportunities will present themselves, which might be a benefit for being a little bit more general. However, if you become an expert at a young age in this one particular space, you'll get hired for that. So it really depends on it. Like you said, I think it's two different kind of career path opportunities to do for yourself.
Yeah. Having mentioned like it depends on the kind of or the certain amount of expertise in certain field or topics or skills. Do you think that someone could be a specialist and a generalist at the same time? So, for example, like I generally know how to get around uh, Creative Cloud and all of the apps because they're all kind of built around the same kind of language and framework model, right? But I specialize in just logo design. So my main, kind of skill set and work is based in Illustrator, for example. Or do you think, there's drawbacks to that too?
That sometimes becomes hard for us when you're building a team because which is why I typically look for people who have a mid-level of expertise as a generalist, but then also something that they love. The logo piece might be something that you love, but it also might be part of a bigger thing, like a brand guidelines system, which might mean that in a book, you're creating 20 of the 50 pages, but someone else is doing the other 30 and they're related to other stuff. Iconography and voice and tone and messaging and visuals and art direction and all that kind of stuff. So it typically, if I'm looking at and talking to someone who's young and is looking to like work with us, I have to explain to them what we do. We are a web and a not really customer focused experiences or consumer focused or people focused because it's B2B, it's B2C, but we do a lot of digital, we do a lot of web, and we do a lot of things that are related to UX and experience and usability related to that. Logo is in there, color theory is in there, content is in there. And so if someone was to come through and say, I love what you guys do, I want to work with you, I'd have to see what are their expertise levels in those things and figure out where they fit with a team. Some people may not want to, on their journey, expand some of those bullet points. They may not want to become an art director. They want to focus on logo marks. They may want to become a generalist and learn from everybody, or just increase those things. I do think it's a benefit to have an awareness. So this parallels how I talk about designers and developers on our team. A good designer knows what answers to give a developer to accomplish what they need to do in design, but they don't need to be a developer themselves, but they need to be able to pass their idea in full as a designer to a developer, knowing the developer is going to probably build it like this. Here's what I need in the back end. Here's some thoughts I had on the interactions, and here's some examples. And that's not being a specialist as a developer, by being a designer, but it is, it's kind of like a requirement. Like you have to, if you want this thing to accomplish what you wanted it to be creatively, you have to be able to do that stuff. That doesn't mean that designers should be developers. I consider them the same and have for a long time, because the experience comes when they both come together. Very difficult to be isolated, but I don't want someone writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript doing an art direction. And vice versa. And that's just our team. That might be very different at another agency, but people ask me all the time, as a young designer, you guys are all digital. Do I have to know development? No. In fact, I don't want you to necessarily spend time learning development. I want you to know what requirements you need for the creative to go to development, and then be able to QA it yourself. And those are general skills in the digital space. And so I would say, yeah, maybe you might need to be a little bit of a generalist of a developer as a designer if you want to work in interactive. I think it would be really hard to not have some of that under your belt.
Over the course of your kind of career and as a business owner, as your own individual designer, do you think there has been more sort of, this is going back to like another topic, but sort of more value put on always learning and always grinding to be considerate of the team and not just like your individual work? Or has there always been kind of this push for like, like you mentioned with the animator that you guys needed this week, like, oh no, we need to like put emphasis on people who are really good at just one thing, like the experts, and then just kind of cater to them so that our project lift, is excelling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say if the person is really passionate about it, they should always be continuing to learn those particular things. We've had designers who are like, I really want to become learn photography, become great with my camera this year. And it's a skill that they picked up over the course of the year. And for us, it's like, how can we help you? Buy lenses? Well, do we want to, can we do workshops? Can we send you to some educational thing? But I think too, that when workflow is really, there's a lot of it, or we'll just say heavy workflow, the continued learning piece sometimes falls a little bit to the wayside. And you have to look at it a little more as, how can I learn this while I'm doing, versus can I devote time to learn this in an isolated environment? Not that that really ever happens, but I would say maybe if you work at a huge place and you start as an intern or apprentice, they're like, you're focusing on just this, learn it, spend time with it, take your time, and in 6 weeks we'll come back and talk about the next thing. We typically don't have a ton of opportunity for that, but like right now we're working on a project where we all have to read a book about a specific design philosophy. I'm 25 years in, someone else is 20 years in, someone else is 10 years in, someone else is 2 years in, and we're all reading the book about this particular philosophy for this project, because that's the requirement. Are any of us an expert in this system? No, but we're all learning it to be, well, we kind of are, but we understand the book, but it's nice to read it and be able to go back and say, here's our reflections on this, and it's different than how we normally do things. Let's talk about it a little bit. So learning never really stops. And for us, a lot of times it depends on the project at that time. But if you're really passionate about something in particular, keep working to become really good at that thing.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking on projects too, how do clients usually take to certain agencies or teams that are like, oh, we specialize in a multitude of things. We're multidisciplinary, and we tackle projects from every kind of angle that you might need, versus like an agency that's like, we just do this one thing, we do it really, really well. And if you stick with us, we're going to excel at just this one thing for you, which you might only need. You might not need anything else. What's your kind of take on that? What have you seen happen?
So it's in the story about how you talk about your agency. So some want to be all advertising agencies make websites and do digital experiences. Web agencies might build product and do research. Artists might make logos and have that crossover. The thing that I think clients look for, and I would say it ranges based on knowledge of going into the ask, which ranges from clients. We have clients who don't know anything about any of the stuff that they're trying to accomplish and want to rely on us to help them fill in the gaps. And we have others that are super specialized and know exactly what they want and have worked with teams like this. In terms of us and Bright Bright Great, we don't really want to be everything anymore. I think for a while that was kind of the hook to try to loop work in. Like, yeah, we could do all these pieces, but then we would find out that 8 of the 10 would be fantastic and 2 of the 10 would be average. And I don't particularly like being average in any of the pieces. So now we would say, well, let's find a strategic partner to make it those 10 out of 10 and fill in the gaps. And I think that that is a service that clients often overlook. They don't understand that if you're good and you're building a really good team, you're helping them by assembling this and putting, offering to step back on a piece so that an expert can do it. We do like to see experiences through, though, from start to finish, which might mean that some of those pieces of expertise fall in the middle of a project. So it might be, let's just say there's 10 pieces. We might take 1, 2, not 3, 4, 5, 6, not 7, 8, 9, and then 10, because that's our expertise. Very difficult to explain that in an RFP process or to a client to say, like, these aren't the same things, because everybody comes to us with, I need a website, but that's not really what they need. Every company wants a brand transformation. The website is a piece of that, but so is copy and photography and assets and tone and messaging and technology and everything. So I think that from when you talk about generalist and specialist, knowing the specialists is very helpful if you're kind of picking up your own specialty pieces. But there are definitely singular contractors who can build a whole website and work with a client through copy and do all the creative and visuals and launch it, and it'd be great all the way through as a single person. That makes them a specialist at that, launching a website and getting all those pieces together. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a generalist, just because they can do all those pieces. That just means they're really good.
Yeah. What?
We're coming up
Let's
on
see.
5-minute mark.
Okay, yeah. I guess maybe I should have asked this at the beginning, but what is generally considered like too shallow to be considered a generalist? Like a generalist, generally has an understanding and ability to grasp concepts beyond just their immediate reach.
Yeah.
What do you think is like a fault that comes with that? Like you're too shallow, a little bit too much of everything where nothing is even good. Have you ever seen that happen?
Well,
to the other people?
you could be a generalist and not an expert at any of those, the skill level low and all of the things. Of course, again, this goes back to a topic we talked about before, which is there are bad designers out there, and they might say I'm a generalist and touch all these pockets, but what you get might be terrible in all those pockets. There might be people who say I'm a generalist and are really expert and could design the logo, could design the digital, understand the tech, can work with the clients, can work with voice and messaging. But if you were saying what is a fault of maybe being too shallow, there's two things. There's one, the fact that you want to include that piece in your arsenal. So if I was to say all of a sudden illustration is part of my skills, I've illustrated, they're terrible. I'm not an expert, but might be something that I offer. I think a fault of that would be when you would be charging too much for that particular service without the ability to back it up with the skill. So it's the reason why when an electrician comes out, not every electrician in every house call. So electricians, if you are listening to this, this is not a slight, but an electrician came out to try to fix my air conditioner, solved the problem in 1 minute. The part cost $4 and the labor was $500 or $600. And that was because they are an expert in making all this happen. And yeah, the tool that it took them to do it was a screwdriver and ultimately $4 of tape. But the labor was very expensive. I wouldn't want to hire a $25 electrician to come out here and electrocute themselves on my property. That's the thing that we do not have in design, which is, this is a great place to end and discuss this. There is no certification level, and there's no institution outside of school where you get a degree that has letters on it that can tell you what you are qualified or not qualified in, like a doctorate of pharmacy or whatever. There is like, I'm certified in Google AdWords, but you can take that online. You and I could both be certified in a week. The thing that is very difficult, and we talked about this internally this week, is who's out there to certify good design? Really no one. The design community takes it upon themselves to do it, but I can't certify someone. Usually we have to go on length of time or a portfolio and can say, I can recognize it. But what if the person failed up and is a design manager now, but doesn't even know how to recognize the good design themselves? They might not be able to pick out that person too. There's also being able to look at someone's work and see the potential, which is when if you are a generalist or a specialist, potential is a really interesting topic here, because you may not have that yet, but you might get there, and it might take some time to get there. And if you can kind of pull that diamond out of the rough and say, I want to work with you on this to get you here, then you're increasing the expertise and you're putting in the effort with that person to grow that. Maybe they will become a specialist at that, but maybe not. Maybe they just stay a generalist, and that's just a skill that they're really good at. So I think it depends, to kind of loop it all back together. I think it just depends on what you want to work on a daily basis. I don't want to do all of everything within a creative project. I want to work on specific parts. That's where I can help add the most value. There are other people who just pick up the whole thing. If you're freelancing and you're building a website for a client all by yourself, you're handling all the pieces. But that's also why I like working with a team. Everybody's better than me at these things. So I have the ability to talk to them and say, look at this, I made it. What do you think? Give me your feedback. I trust your work better than my work on something like this. Give me some feedback. So that's why I like working in teams on this stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean generalist or specialist either. My specialty is digital design and experience work. That's what I do. There's lots of different things within it.
Very well said. I don't know if we have time for the last question, but I think that's a very good way to end it too.
What is the last question?
The last question is, on the contrary, are there any faults that come with being an expert? Can kind of being, are you ignorant of other things if you are too well versed into one specific subject?
I think if you're really talented in one particular subject and you are that talented, you're a benefit to any company in with that talent. And so it's I'll go Marvel Universe here. Doctor Strange, fantastic doctor, but not so great as a person and other things. It's the same kind of thing. You can be amazing in the operating room and terrible at all these other things. And so I don't want to say that's kind of maybe a too extreme of an example, but if you're really, really good at something and you can provide that to clients, it's totally fine to be that, especially over time too, is like, I'm the wrecking crew. I come in, this is what I do, these are the results. But you can't be ignorant in all the other pieces. Like you have to know how to work with people, and you have to be able to come in and assess situations before you do what you do. So you do still need some of that other stuff. But if you are really in love with one particular thing and that's your jam, it's totally fine to go all in on that. I wouldn't hand another instrument to Yo-Yo Ma and be like, can you play this? You're really good at violin, or Dan is going to kill me because I think he's a violin. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's a celloist.
I think it's a celloist.
But I wouldn't go in and be like, yo, can you play electric guitar because you're a really good musician? The answer is probably no, because I play this instrument. So, and that's totally fine. So I think that translates really well too. If you're an amazing illustrator and that's where your passion is, you could do that for lots of different companies and be great there.
Yeah. Amazing.
So let's wrap it there. Thanks if anyone has listened and made it to the end. Again, subscribe and like this so that you can get notifications for more of them. And thank you again, Juan, and I am Jason, and we are Design Summer Sessions. We are over the 75% mark of the summer, moving into fall sessions next.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Any last shout out, Juan?
Shout out to you. Shout out to this entire series that we've had so far. I can't wait to start the fall sessions. And hopefully we get more kind of questions regarding not just creatives, but also just like, more kind of broader topics that relate to the creative industry somehow, or adjacent, topics. I'm just excited to start those.
Yeah, we will see.
Yeah.
Comment or contact us. So thank you for listening, and we will be back soon.